Hello everybody, welcome to the first video of the course Construction Claims. Before we move ahead, please make sure you have checked out the lecture 00, that is the course intro. There are some key definitions that we will use in this video and all the forthcoming lectures also, so I think it's very important that we are on the same page when we use these terms. So please go ahead and check it out. So when a project team encounters events that could lead to the need for the submission of a claim, these claims arise typically due to the actions by other parties, that is the employer, or in some cases the engineer, or in some cases any factor beyond our control. So in these cases it is very important to carefully consider several factors before we even go ahead and submit the claims. What are these factors? Let's take a look. The first thing that we need to take into consideration is the actual value of the claim. So we need to understand whether the cost of preparing the claim itself is justified by the potential return. So what we need to do is we need to allocate resources based on the expected outcome. For example, would it make sense to submit a claim of $1,000 in a project of $10 million? It would not, right? But at the same time, a claim of, $100,000 would make complete sense to invest some time and resources in. So the value of the claim must be taken into consideration before we even move ahead with the preparation of the claim. The second thing we need to understand is the potential impact and the severity of the delay event. Is the delay event significant enough to even warrant the submission of the claim? For example, this is a 4 or 5 year long project and we are still in the early stages, and we encounter a delay of, a day. In my opinion, it would not. While I understand contractors can be, especially in the early stages of the project, be a little more aggressive with this kind of stuff and want to submit claims for each and everything, it probably does not even make sense, because this one day of delay can be mitigated over a course of 5 years easily. But at the same time, if this is a very small event, for example, but it happens in a very late stage of the project, at that time it could become critical. At that time it might warrant a claim submission. So we need to assess the impact and the severity of the event. The third thing we need to analyze is the actual strength of the claim. We need to understand whether it is likely to succeed. What is the likelihood of a favorable outcome? We have to understand if the effort and the time and the money we put into preparation and submission of the claim actually does it have even a slight chance of getting approved, because in a lot of cases we submit claims that we ourselves know are never gonna get approved. Let's take an example. For example, your shop drawing approval is delayed, but that did not hinder you and you commenced the works on site without the shop drawing approval. Would this claim have any chance of success? No, right? Because you actually were not hindered. So while we can get tempted to submit such claims, it is not worth the time, effort and the money to prepare and submit such claims. The next thing we need to understand is we need to at least internally develop a strategy for submitting the claim. We need to understand that claims, even if they are awarded, they are never awarded fully. So there should be a negotiation margin. But this is very subjective. In some cases, and this is also a right approach, in some cases contractors tend to submit one robust, undeniable case that can be defended against everything. But in other cases, we like to maximize all issues just to increase the negotiation margin. So a decision must be taken before even submitting a claim what actually we want to do with it. With that being said, we have to play safe, but at the same time we don't have to be ridiculous. For example, you can't say an extra worker cost you $1,000 a day when your actual costs are 200, for example. 250, 270 would be a good number to go with in this case. The next thing we need to understand is the complexity of the claim. We have to determine that if our in-house resources have the necessary expertise, or do we need additional assistance. For example, if it is a claim with the potential of, let's say, $2 million, your young planning engineer that you have working on site might not be the right person to do it. Maybe in this case you need an expert external consultant. So yes, we have to look at the complexity of the claim and we have to look at the in-house resources and then take a decision on whether this can be done internally or no. The next thing we need to take into consideration is client relationship. It goes without saying that a claim is more often than not perceived negatively by clients. You have to understand and recognize that claims may strain relationships, and we need to consider potential impacts on existing and future partnerships. For example, in one of my previous jobs, we worked with one major client. I'm not at liberty to say the name of the client, but even though there were many cases in projects with this client slash employer where we got massively delayed, sometimes it even cost us, but we never submitted a claim to this client because we valued the value of the partnership more. We knew the value of the claim. For example, it was $500,000. We knew that the potential value of the business we had from this employer slash client was way more. So it is very important to carefully understand what this client means for us and whether it is worth submitting this particular claim. The next thing we need to understand is we need to evaluate the decision makers or the claim reviewers. We need to understand their potential biases, their actual responsibilities, and also their level of expertise. For any claim to be resolved amicably, all parties have to try to act impartially, which is rarely the case. And if this case is severe, if the parties involved in the project are emotionally invested in the project, then it is highly unlikely that this claim will come to any outcome whatsoever. So in this case, it is very important to engage external experts and request the other party to do so as well. For example, in most of our projects, the reviewer of the claim is the consultant, and more often than not, we as a contractor are always arguing and fighting with the consultant throughout the length of the project, right? So when we submit this claim to the consultant slash engineer, it is highly likely that the consultant gets very defensive and he argues a strong case whether he has a valid point or no, and this results in an unnecessary back and forth, which results to no outcome whatsoever. It is highly advisable to devise, therefore, a claim strategy at a very early stage in the project. We have to anticipate these claims in advance and take a decision on what we want to do with these claims. Are these claims simply a means of putting more pressure on the client to get something else done, an approval, a payment for something else, etc., etc., or is this a claim that we actually need to cover our costs, and without this we simply cannot go ahead? This claim strategy, therefore, is very crucial in the project. This strategy should cover everything that we discussed, the 7 points that we just discussed, and then we should outline what our desired objectives are, what we are trying to achieve with this claim. I'll give an example. This was very early on in my career. I had to prepare a claim for a complex-ish project. It was not that straightforward. There were like 13 or 14 delay events that the claim was based on. When I sat with the engineer slash the consultant to review this claim, I was surprised at how easy it was to get it approved. I realized that 12 out of my 13-14 odd delay events were simply accepted by the consultant. I was really happy. I went back to the office and then started analyzing this claim in a little more detail. I then realized that the 12 events that he had approved had nothing to do with him. These were all attributable directly to the employer. The 2 delay events that he rejected were both related to him, where he had messed up and caused a delay. Eventually, I had to make some adjustments to this claim and the outcome was successful. The point I'm trying to make is that before we submit a claim, it is really important to consider how early communication can be effective. What happens is we submit a claim and this claim is sent to the engineer and the employer is also copied. All parties suddenly get very defensive. The employer starts calling the consultant and the consultant starts throwing rejections at us. This happens because we take them by surprise when we send these claims. We should never be the case if the intent is to have a successful outcome. So the receiving party needs to be informed in advance. You need to of course, you are sending emails and letters, that is a given, but also a level of verbal communication on site. Sit with the consultant slash engineer slash reviewer, whatever we want to call him. Sit with him and explain to him why this claim is being submitted, what sort of delay events are being submitted. That will give him some time to prepare his defense to the employer also. And the employer will also know that this claim is coming. So all parties will be prepared to receive this claim, and this will massively increase the chance of a successful outcome. One of the points that we discussed earlier was the involvement of external people. This is so important. The reason is that we as project people who are directly on the projects cannot think straight when it comes to these events. We always have some sort of a bias towards us. In order to ensure a successful claim, an external set of eyes is very useful because their analysis will be impartial, and impartiality is absolutely necessary for a successful outcome. I have personally made it a habit of having the claims that I prepare looked at by somebody. This does not mean that this somebody has to be an external consultant who you pay a lot of money. This could be somebody within your organization also, but who is not involved in this particular project. We as project people love conflicts, we love arguments, we love fights, but we have to take into consideration that all of these things kill claims. This lecture was sort of a continuation to the intro. In the coming lectures, we will dive a little more into the contractual aspects and the actual claim preparation. So stay tuned. Please make sure you take the quiz at the end of the video. The link to the quiz is in the comment section, and I will see you in the next lecture.